and we've given you a round of applause. You're very welcome to join us for the rest of the afternoon for the board meetings, but I will understand if you've got more interesting things to do. So first of all, for the team of the month for December is the Arrow Award. So delighted to have Team Arrow, big waves. What I'll do is I'll read out the nomination for you, which is lovely. I would like to nominate the Arrow Award team for going above and beyond every day, particularly supporting patients at the end of their life. This is evidenced by a series of cards they've recently received. Thank you for nursing me back from the brink. I would like to add my thanks for giving my husband such wonderful care. You are all stars shining in the small world of side room 6 for nearly 6 weeks. Thank you so much for the exemplary care you showed in looking after our late mother. So many different teams and individuals treated Mum with great care and respect. Your ward staff and visiting staff are a tribute to the highest standards we could see in looking after our Mum. Thank you so much for the wonderful, amazing care you all gave to our beautiful Mum. When we visited her on the ward, many times we saw staff having a laugh and a joke with her. It was lovely seeing her laugh while she was in hospital. Sadly, she passed away on the ward. She wasn't alone, as I was allowed to stay the night. This was a great comfort to us. The nurse at the time was so wonderful, so caring, and hugged me so hard as I cried. We are so grateful for the care of Mum and us. You are amazing human beings. Team, I often say at the board, the 2 most important things we do as a trust is to bring life safely into the world and help life leave the world with dignity. Team, you do that day in, day out. And on behalf of the board, we can't thank you enough. You're absolutely worthy winners of the December Team Going the Extra Mile Award.
Thank you. Thank you, Russell. All in the day's work.
Yeah, but you know, it is about going. Those little aspects of kindness and love with a small L, when people are particularly fragile and emotional, is what takes just doing the job from really loving the job. And you're great examples to us. So thank you all very, very much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
But don't go, because you can hear Lindsay's nomination now, if you like, just for a second.
Oh, yeah, go on then.
Okay. Lindsay's good as well. I'm not saying she's as good as you, but she's good as well. So Lindsay's won the Employee of the Month for December. And a number of us, I'm not sure whether you guys have been able to go. If ever you've got a spare hour on a Tuesday, there's something called Transformation Tuesday, which is absolutely brilliant, which Lindsay runs. So Transformation Tuesday has been a remarkable development in the life of Wye Valley Trust. The progress which it demonstrates and the team spirit which it engenders have been and continue to be exceptional. It has been clear throughout this initiative that it's been hugely influenced by Lindsay. Her enthusiasm is always infectious. Her drive and passion are quite exceptional. Particularly on Tuesday, we had to vote which Tina Turner picture we both most felt like on that morning. That's the type of thing Lindsay's introduced. The detailed organisation demonstrates not only attention to detail, but also the respect in which she is held by those around her. The evolution of the concept into other aspects of the activities has been significant across the group, as was witnessed in the recent Safety in Sync, where her contribution warranted individual mention. She has demonstrated total professionalism and not insignificant talent by going the extra mile. Also, Lindsay's been brilliant at the recent innovation cross-group session we had. Lindsay, you are a star. Every Tuesday when I go to Transformation Tuesday, you just exude positive energy. And I often say to people in life, you either give energy and you make people feel better, or you take energy and you make people feel less good. Lindsay, you are a beacon of positive energy. So thank you very much. You really do deserve being the Going the Extra Mile Award individual winner for December. Now, the next nomination basically is like War and Peace. It's for Claire Seal, who's not on the line with us. So I'm going to edit it because it is War and Peace. So I'll pick out some of the highlights. So following the COVID pandemic, we had a very significant backlog of echoes within our heart and lung department with an enormous waiting list. Whilst we had some external support from both outsourcing and insourcing, none of this would have been feasible without the hard work, dedication and excellence shown by Claire. Claire has taken on the acting role of our head of echo for an interim period until we were able to recruit into the role. Claire has gone above and beyond in supporting the deployment of everyone to the aim of reducing the waiting lists. Claire combines this with her own demanding workload of both inpatient and outpatient echoes, alongside the additional demands and pressures of supporting 2 new B6 cardiophysiologists with supervision, education and training to allow them to meet BSc accreditation within the next 12 to 18 months. Despite her significant workload, Claire is always cheerful, supportive and responsive as needed to the demands of the service. Claire, you are a star. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for Claire. So lovely to see you all, team. Thank you very much for your hard work, and day in day out, just carry on doing what you're doing. You're stars. Thank you very much. Okay, team.
Bye-bye.
So let's get ourselves organised. So and Garth, nice to have you on the line. So I don't think we've only got one apologies from absence, I believe, which is Alan Dawson. Is that correct? So any other apologies? If you're not in the meeting, can you let me know? Any new declarations of interest? Please raise a digital hand. So that's sort of put me off a bit with that chat box comment there, Jane. So no new declarations of interest. Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of April. If you were unhappy with the accuracy of any of those, could you please raise a digital hand for me? I can't see any digital hands raised, so I'll take those as an accurate record. So I think that moves us on to the matters arising, which are on page 22 of the digital pack. And the first was for Jeffrey to review how the data on staff leaving the trust can be presented in a user-friendly way in future reports. And you've got that in hand, I think, Jeffrey. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And an awful lot of these appear to be your action points, Jeffrey. There you need to have a word with the person doing the action log. Jeffrey, on the second one, will discuss with colleagues in the foundation group how we can incorporate be kind and be polite. I think you've got that in hand. Thank you, Jeffrey. And then actions in progress. The summary report of the analysis of the impact of menopause on our workforce will be included in April, but that's been delayed and is coming in July. I guess on this one, Jeffrey, I do just want some assurance though, and yesterday you were brilliant in F&P talking about not losing any staff because of issues of flexibility. I really do want our colleagues who are suffering the practical challenges of being premenopausal or menopausal to know that we are an extremely supportive employer. Can you give us that assurance that you feel that communication is felt on the front line?
Yeah, that is correct, Russell. We started doing training and awareness sessions with all our line managers, and we're now capturing the details on our HR ESR reports. So I'll bring something to the board in July, but I'm confident that we're doing lots of work in the background. And we have a menopause working group as well, which includes employees, trade union reps, and some line managers. So lots of work in the background.
Okay, super. Thank you, Jeffrey. The next was on the issue of violence and aggression towards members of our staff. And again, that's coming back. Jeffrey, when you do come back to us on that, can you also come back to us on the issue of, because we have picked this up in another bit of the foundation group, where staff are being aggressive to other members of staff. And it sort of goes back to the be kind, be polite culture that I want us to really, really push, that it is totally unacceptable in any respect to be aggressive or domineering to another member of staff. We're all part of the same team. We're all trying to do the same thing. So if you can just make sure that we pick up on that as well, that would be great. And then finally, Jeffrey will provide an update at the board workshop on the issues of cultural improvements, and you'll come back to us on that. Okay. So I would have a word with the person doing the action log, Jeffrey, as I think you're the only one I sort of directed any of the actions to. Are there any actions to the rest of the executive directors that they would care to admit to from the last set of minutes? Okay, great. Well done in keeping your heads down. So I think, therefore, we're on to the Chief Executive's report. It's a busy time, Glenn. This is the end of year board report. So over to you, please.
Thank you, Russell. So I'll just pull out some summary issues from the report. And I mean, firstly, the launch of the National Impact Report, which is the approach to improvement that is being adopted across the NHS. I think the positive thing on this, which we reflected with the non-exec just a moment ago, is this is very much recognising that there are a number of approaches to improvement, and there's no kind of one approach which is any better than any other, but you do need to have a systematic approach to improvement. And certainly what we've been doing, what we were able to just celebrate there with Lindsay particularly is a cultural thing. So as well as the kind of systematic approach to improvement, the culture needs to be right. And that culture includes giving permission for people to make changes and reacting appropriately when they're successful and when they're not. And certainly we've got some fine examples of how we've shifted that culture within the organisation over the last few years. And we had the pleasure of Julian Hartley joining our three boards meeting when we met last. And Julian, whilst he's now Chief Exec of NHS Providers, he was Chief Exec of Leeds Teaching Hospitals. They did the Virginia Mason work. And he helped on this national review. And you can see within the box in my report the 10 recommendations that were put forward to them, all of which have been adopted by NHS England. I think one of the things that I'm keen to have further dialogue with NHS England about is trying to get hold of some more resources to support what we're doing across the group on improvement. At the moment, what tends to happen nationally is that there's a budget that goes towards organisations that need support rather than ensuring that there's adequate resources for organisations at kind of all points in their journey. So we'll be pushing that a little bit more. It's also encouraging to see the CQC bringing improvement into their assessment of the way organisations work. So and we've certainly got a lot of positives to talk about there. Which takes me on to the next item, which is the Group Improvement Conference, which Lindsay pulled together, and I had the pleasure of kicking off and then joining the end of, and it went through an entire week, and was just a really, really great example of how individuals from across the group have done some improvement projects, and then we're sharing the results of that and supporting and encouraging each other to do more. There was also the Group Nursing and Midwifery Care Excellence Conference, which was an in-person event in Bromsgrove. And Russell and I were able to go along to part of that, and that was just fabulous to see all of our nursing and midwifery teams coming together and sharing and motivating each other along the way. So I hope that's something that we will be, as you can see in my report, I dreamed of those kind of things happening when we first created the group. So it's lovely to see that taking shape. I then talk about a project to go faster on outpatient waiting times. We'll probably come back to that in a future board, because we've got a meeting with the national team on Tuesday of next week with group representatives. mainly a focus on trying to move to a situation where we have no patients waiting more than 52 weeks for procedures in an outpatient setting, although we will look at how we can make improvements in inpatient waiting lists as well, using some of the national GIRFT data. Then talk about the National Urgent Emergency Care Recovery Plan, and I'll be playing a little bit of a part in that, which we'll probably come back to when we look at our urgent care performance in a moment, in terms of where we're doing some more redesign work on what's happening locally. Attached is a list of some of the things the Association of Groups have been doing over the last year. There's then an update on the NHS provider licence. A bit of a deep dive into what's going on in outpatients, in cancer services, in diagnostic services, in pharmacy, and it's encouraging to see that we've talked about pharmacy challenges from a recruitment perspective in previous board meetings. It's encouraging to see there's a little bit of green shoots there, but it's something we're keeping a very close eye on. And then pathology, we've talked about the creation of a network across Coventry and Warwickshire, Hereford and Worcester, and certainly the use of digital technology has made that much more feasible, which will certainly help us to have a much more sustainable local service, but also with potentially more access into specific expertise as we look at digital images rather than having to send slides across the Midlands. And then the employees of the month and team of the month details that you just went through, Chairman. So I'm happy to take any questions on any of that.
No, that's great, Glenn. I mean, it's certainly been, as this is the end of the year, so to speak, it certainly has been a very challenging year for us, I think. And but we are doing a phenomenal amount. But it is worth saying to members of the public that we recognise that despite Wye Valley doing much better than a number of other trusts, the whole of the NHS is very focused on improving its waiting lists for our citizens. Any questions or perspectives to Glenn? Frank.
Yeah, just to support the last comments from Glenn, I visited phlebotomy 2 days ago, and the impact of Maxims on their processes was really, really massive. It's quite amazing how good the system was and how much it had improved from what they told me. Just useful to see. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. And Grace?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report, Glenn. I'm really happy to see the remote consultant support for the blood transfusion and haematology, and also that there was some support there across pharmacy. And just wondering, is there anywhere else in the trust that we know of where staff are struggling, remote support could ease the pressures? Because I'm just aware of the current pressures on staff, the difficulties with patients, and the need to think innovatively about our approaches as we tackle this.
Yeah, probably the shortest answer is there are lots of other examples, and I think one of the things that I'm keen to look at with the group is the ability to use the clinical expertise that we have in all of the trusts in the group to create a bit more resilience. And COVID obviously has helped to accelerate the use of technology to do that. And therefore, I think there's an opportunity in some areas where we wouldn't traditionally have 24/7 rotas to actually start to have advice and guidance, particularly available using all of the clinicians in the group, which is obviously a big team. So I think we'll see a little bit more of that emerging. Some have already done it, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah, no, it's an enormous opportunity for us. David, did you want to come in on that quickly?
Yeah, particularly, Grace, we're the first trust in the West Midlands to go live with digital reporting for histology slides. We just need other people to plug into us, and we're there.
Thanks, David. And finally, Ian, then we'll move on.
I think David just made the point. Actually, I think we're underselling the digital imaging. I think in histopathology, I did want to make the point about us leading the way there, because as a small trust, it's not easy for us sometimes to be leading, but actually we absolutely are in terms of that digital imaging. So I think we need to recognise that.
Yeah, no, super. Thank you. But we will therefore move on to the integrated performance report. And Jane, do you want to lead us on this first, please?
Russell. Yes, I was going to talk broadly about concerns, opportunities, and some progress. So I guess in my concerns box would be our ED performance. So, although broadly, regionally, we're sort of middle of the pack, it's nowhere near where we want to be. And there's a huge amount of work, both internally and with things like our urgent community response that's going on to try to really improve that. All of that's coming together, and so by the time we next meet, we should have a plan which is really around preparing us for next winter, which will show hopefully how we're going to manage it more safely than we did the winter just gone. So I almost can't tell you how much work there is going on around this, and it's involving lots and lots of staff getting involved. An example of that is around the boarding policy. So we know that the boarding policy, whilst difficult for patients and difficult for staff, it's had some positive impacts on things like ambulance turnaround. Certainly our mortality levels are continuing to drop. But engaging all of our ward staff in feeding back on what it's meant to them, looking after extra patients on the ward, and what's that meant to broader quality and what that's meant to staff and patient experience. So a lot of staff engagement work going on across all of that. Our council performance, Andy's going to cover that in his report. So though we're making some progress, more progress that we need to make, and we have got some concerns in the diagnostic pathway around that. The other thing I'm concerned about is the planned industrial action by our junior doctors. We obviously managed at the April industrial action really well. We were complimented externally on how well it was managed, and I'm sure we'll continue to manage it well, but we have more action in a couple of weeks' time, and then monthly, unless there's a resolution across the rest of the summer. The impact on our ability to do the activity that we've planned is significant from that, but also the impact on particularly our clinical leads and our management teams, because managing it well takes a huge amount of their time and energy and resource, and when they're doing that, they're not doing all the improvement work that we want them to do. So I think it's important that we understand the wider impact of that rather than just on the strike days. In terms of opportunities, it's really great to see how well we've done on reducing nurse agency. We've got a little bit further to go on medical agency, but our real opportunities around productivity. So again, a huge amount of work going into how we improve our productivity so that we can meet the financial plan that's been set this year, which is somewhat stretching. So again, we'll come back and talk about those things again in the future. And then in terms of progress, I know it's really good to see the change in our HR metrics. All of them are going in the right direction and have improved really significantly over the last 6 months. So just a big thank you to Jeffrey and his team and to all of our teams, because that's been a huge effort to improve those metrics. So those are the things I wanted to start us off with.
That's great, Jane. Any questions or perspectives to Jane? Otherwise, we'll dive into the detail. I would just like to say again, as it's the end of the fiscal year, Jane, you have led an enormous amount of transformation and investment in Wye Valley, with some really profound developments in the way we do things to improve things. So thank you on behalf of the board for your phenomenal efforts. And in terms of others doing phenomenal efforts, I think it's over to David Mowbray and Lucy Flanagan on quality and safety. So Lucy, are you going to lead us off on this first?
Yes, I will, and then I'll hand over to David if that's okay, Chair. So just a few things from me today. Firstly, just pleasing to report that our progress against the CQC action plan. So colleagues will recall we had an inspection in November 2022. And following that inspection, the Trust was issued a report that recommended 10 things that the Trust must do, and then a further 12 recommendations. We reported progress against the Action Plan to Quality Committee in April and are pleased that we've concluded and completed all but 3 actions, and they have now been transferred over to business as usual processes for monitoring. And then the 3 remaining ones, progress is being made, but they remain a quality priority for us for the forthcoming year and will be subject to quarterly reporting through quality committee and then in summary up to board. Whilst it might seem trivial for board reporting, I did just want to mention the standing down of the incident response level for the pandemic, because actually what that meant for our staff was the first time in 3 years we were able to release clinical teams from wearing face masks in their everyday work, and we're able to return to sort of pre-pandemic infection prevention control measures, which for our staff was something they were desperate for, particularly as summer comes and the hot months arise. Clearly, we will wear masks at patients' requests, and our staff continue to wear masks if they choose to do so. And as a consequence of the pandemic being under control and that incident response being stood down, we are seeing very small numbers of cases in our bed base. And one day last week, we actually had none, as I allude to in the report. We remain an outlier for mixed sex breaches, 173 reported in April, and we are a national outlier for that. Our trust stance is that we would only support a mixed sex accommodation breach where there's a significant patient safety issue. So, for example, if we're struggling to offload ambulances, or if we need to get somebody into a specialty bed in order to either pre-optimise them for surgery or to provide treatments. So we're just focusing on mixed sex breaches at the moment to ensure that we are only enabling those to happen when it is clinically right to do so. Last time I reported to board the high-level feedback from the place inspection audits, and the report just includes some more detail there around the individual hospital sites results across the domains within the place audit. And the report just contains those areas where we were below the national average, but it's pleasing to note that in most instances we're above the national average or just marginally below. And Jane's already alluded to it in her summary report, but we're thrilled that now for 2 quarters consistently, we're achieving above the national standard requirements for cleanliness across all clinical areas in the trust, and that hadn't been consistent previously. And then finally, the staffing element of the report contains April's information. We do continue to see a number of very frail and dependent patients who are requiring higher levels of care, which is driving an increasing staffing demand, which is why you're seeing fill rates above 100% in some areas. But that said, Jane's already alluded to it, we've also seen a significant reduction in agency expenditure in the last month. Happy to hand over to David for mortality and then take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. David.
Yeah, thanks, Russell. So another reassuring report from mortality. Shimmy in particular has reduced, is the lowest in the group, 104.9. HSMR is still higher than we would like. I'm convinced it's secondary to issues around coding and palliative care recording in the clinical notes. Chris is pulling together a group on that, so I look forward to updating the board in the coming months on the improvements that we'll see there. We've had notable falls in our fractured neck of femur mortality. If I can remind colleagues, when we moved over to the geriatric ward, we had a split of the orthopedic and geriatric teams, which I was concerned had perhaps caused a deterioration, but we're back on track with regards to that. And lastly, we're linking in now with public health in Herefordshire to improve the analysis of all Herefordshire's deaths. There's a great deal of information out there that we weren't party to before, but they've opened up their databases, and we're working on really a pan-Herefordshire approach to mortality as well. But early stages on that point. Thanks, Russell.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Lucy. Any questions or perspectives to David and Lucy? Please raise a digital hand. Okay, I'll ask one then. So, Lucy and David, what's your individual biggest worry at the moment? Lucy?
I think staff resilience, Chair. I think, you know, we've said it before, haven't we, that the pandemic had an enormous impact on staff and the public and everybody for that matter. But I think the winter pressures, the fact that the NHS has resumed to sort of post-pandemic recovery and the pressure that that creates, plus the industrial action that Jane alludes to, for me, it is around staff resilience and capacity to deal with all of the demands that we're now facing in what will be a very challenging year.
And given the sort of Jane's introduction and Jeffrey's action points from the action logs, is there anything that more you think we could be doing, because we can't sort out the pay awards discussions, but is there anything else you think we could be doing that we're not doing as a board?
My sense is we're doing all of the right things. I personally would like to be more visible. I know that staff value hugely, you know, executives, non-execs being visible, just being there to talk to them. And sometimes the demands on our time don't allow for us to be as visible as we want to be. But I don't think there's any particular gaps that I can think of right now, Chair.
Thanks, Lucy. And David, what's your biggest worry at the moment?
I think similar to Lucy's, Russell, it's the continued pressure on the front door. So here we are on the first day of summer, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but we 36, 38 predicted number of patients above our bed base for the following morning. So there's just this winter pressure that goes into summer is really difficult to deal with, and we're not getting the breaks to recover that we seem to get previously, and that's leading on to what Lucy described, I think.
No, great point, and nicely segues into Andy's report, which, if there are no other questions to Lucy and David, we'll move on to Andy's operational overview. Andy, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's what Jane's already alluded to as a challenge start to the year, particularly with the industrial action in April in the 11-day weekend that gave us over the Easter period. I will just touch on May, seeming we've just entered summer, as David has stated. The impact of the 3 bank holiday weekends. We've seen one of our busiest months for urgent and emergency care with 6,000 plus ED attendances, and we've also had not only our busiest day for ED attendances with almost 260 type 1 attendances, but also the busiest weekend last weekend for Saturday, Sunday, excluding the bank holiday that we've seen as well. So as David's alluded to, the pressure still is significant on our front door and our front door teams. As Jane's already alluded to, in April, we started the journey to review our acute floor, particularly our ambulatory ED, which was required over COVID in terms of increasing our physical capacity to our social distancing and improving our ambulance handover position. Ourselves and the acute and emergency team have realised that the sort of quality, safety, performance and finance of that area is logistically not delivering now. We're in a sort of post-COVID world and needs to change. And that's recognised by the whole of the ED team. So during May, the ED team have had a summit that was led expertly by our clinical director, James Bartlett, for acute and emergency, and supported by the clinical lead, Faye Dagger, for ED, which engaged 70 to 80 staff across the department, across the trust, looking at the pathways and looking at how we can deliver our ED in a different way, using the floor plan and the staff that we have available. They've done that in conjunction with visits to George Eliot, because we know George Eliot and the group are a high performer in terms of that type 1 performance, and they're bringing that knowledge and expertise back. And that's also coincided with a frailty away day, where the frailty team also looked at the same a challenge in terms of that frailty pathway and how that links into our front door team, and that was also brought to the ED Summit. I think what is key here is the overall trust engagement of our front door team are bringing to the rest of the trust. They're moving away from it's the medical division's ED to our ED, and they're bringing the rest of the team along with that. And there are some great new ways of working that we're aiming to trial across June and July, where we will PDSA a number of schemes, from how we utilise our ambulatory area for an increased SDEC, how our community urgent response team link in, frailty, how that links to our value and patients time agenda, and also expanding our virtual ward. So June and July really is a period of test fast, learn fast, and scale up fast in terms of our urgent care plan. As Jane said, we will bring that back to the board in due course. Jane's already alluded to cancer, which is definitely a concern of mine as well. April and May has been challenging, where we've seen 2 of our general surgeons leave the trust, and we also had 3 out of 6 of our gastroenterology consultants off absence for long periods of time. So there was some real pressure on our cancer pathways, as well as losing some capacity in Ross Community Hospital, as we had to change the decontamination washers there over a 3-week period. But as James alluded to, our biggest concerns are really radiology, histology, histopathology, and endoscopy. In terms of radiology, the main drivers there is reporting turnaround times. Patient access times are pretty good, really, but our reporting times range between 10 to 16 days in some of our modalities. So there's a whole action plan around that, including outsourcing some of our elective reporting to our provider that provides some of our overnight reporting capacity, and also looking to outsource some of our ED and inpatient reporting to allow our radiologists, which we know we've got a number of vacancies at, to focus on some of our high priority workload. We're also looking at some of the processes for prioritisation, and also looking into putting some allocation officers, which is a forerunner to some of our community diagnostic centre posts, to enable them to track and prioritise the workload for our radiology teams. In terms of histopathology, some of the turnaround times there are also challenged, and we've got a locum starting this month. But also, more importantly, we've got the interface between Apex, which is our pathology reporting system, being interfaced with Maxims during June. So that should improve work list management for some of our consultants for decision making. And then endoscopy, a number of challenges there because of the absences, but we've got additional sessions being scheduled over the summer. So 5 additional sessions being scheduled within core to try and bring our access times down in endoscopy. We've already seen an improvement where in April and May we were at 4 weeks for access for our patients, down to 10 days, but we've got 5 additional sessions over the summer period, and that's including some support from Cancer Alliance funding that will enable us to bring in a additional endoscopist for us to get on top of our backlog. And then finally, our elective pathways, 78 weeks. Our patients are waiting 78 weeks for treatment. By the end of May, we had 24 patients that have breached that standard. Majority of those patients are all being treated in early June. For June, we have a forecasted position of 14 patients. The majority of those, all bar one, are due to some challenging SLAs we have with other providers that provide visiting consultants to Herefordshire. And currently we're seeking some resolution and other options so those patients don't breach before the end of June.
Thanks, Andy. Just before I invite other questions, who are those problematic SLAs with?
One in particular is with Worcester, but we've also got some with UHB as well. But the particular concern for 78 weeks is with Worcester Acute.
Okay, thank you. Questions and perspectives to Andy? Glenn?
Thanks, Andy. It's great to see the level of same-day emergency care that's now going on. So, about 45% of our admissions, yet obviously demand at the front door is going up and our bed occupancy is still very high. How can we reassure ourselves that same-day emergency care doesn't become a fast-track outpatient option?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think what we know is there is opportunities within the current volumes in ED. There are opportunities because of the capacity of our SDEC that by expanding the floor plane through our ambulatory ED, there is further opportunities for streaming more patients into an SDEC environment. I think there is the balance between same-day emergency care and hot clinic type appointments that we just need to ensure ourselves we're not in the danger of SDEC becoming a hot clinic area. And I know James Bartlett is particularly keen on us ensuring it doesn't become a sort of super outpatient clinic with a 24-hour access and maintains that pull from ED or that pull from communities as well in primary care. I think we just need to make sure we've got the balance right. I think there's a place for both, but SDEC isn't one of them, and James is particularly cognizant of that.
Yeah, that's really helpful. We just need to make sure it converts inpatient activity to ambulatory rather than outpatient activity to fast track.
Clearly something we need to keep an eye on, Glenn, as we go forward. Frank?
Yeah, thanks for your report, Andy. The excessive numbers you referred to, there are sort of record numbers at the start of what you said. Do we know whether that is abnormal for us, just for us, or typical elsewhere? Have we any idea what's causing those rises?
I think that's a good question, Frank. I think we've seen, the natural rise and increase in demand, but I think the rest of the particularly sort of locally in sort of Worcestershire and Shropshire, definitely seeing the same, and regionally we're seeing the same kind of increases as well. I think various trust peaks and troughs. I think we're normally sort of behind the curve. Elsewhere we're seeing increase, and then we normally get it sort of a week or 10 days later. But I think everybody is seeing this increase in activity. What's driving it? I think it's multifaceted, Frank.
And Francis, thanks, Frank.
Thanks, Andy. I'm just picking up that last point. It would be good to triangulate it with general practice as to the trends in terms of general practice activity. But my point was going back to the opportunity about redesigning the front door and the emergency thing. Absolutely support that. And reflecting on Lucy's, what she's worried about, it is resilience. We've got, if I'm generous, a 3-month window to get it all flowing well before we're into the new winter, on the basis that we hope we at least get a little bit of summer. So this is the time that we need to get the systems flowing, give people a bit of a breather, a bit of confidence that they're going to be able to keep their heads above for next winter. So absolutely applaud that and delighted to see that learning across the group. My second point was really, and apologies if I'm not up to speed on where we're at, was about AI reporting for radiology. So, we've got a capacity issue. We look globally. What are we doing about machine interpretation of radiological reports?
Jane, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, we asked that very question yesterday in our finance and performance with our clinical support team. It is being looked at through the regional radiology network, but there isn't a provider yet that we're able to access. My guess is it's not going to be very far away, but they are looking at it regionally.
And Andy, did you want to add anything to Jane's answer? You weren't wise to just allow your managing director to give the answer.
No, I refer to the boss.
And John, did you want to come in on the first bit of Francis's point, or was it another point?
It was really about the growth in demand. I think, I don't know to what extent, but I'm pretty confident that the long waiting lists impact on urgent demand in primary and secondary care as patients turn around the system while they're waiting for their treatment to commence. So I think that's something we need to bear in mind and redouble our efforts. Constantly try and drive down those waiting lists. It will help urgent care as well as planned care. And there is a trial going on soon, hopefully, around AI with stroke CTs. That's in the pipeline UHB are leading on that. So, and we're in on that with Dan's trying to secure some money to get some project management. So there's a bit of it coming along.
But thanks, John. Any other questions for Andy? Andy, this is sort of a homework question, low priority. I don't need it in the action log, but I would be interested, given our current levels of productivity and capacity, how long would it take us to get back to what was previously regarded as acceptable RTT on an 18-week level? What sort of period of time are we looking for? Type of thing to think about when you're on a beach in Greece or Mallorca or some other nice holiday destination. But my sense is, whilst we're doing well and we're, like I said earlier, relatively speaking, doing very well on a number of areas, we are still looking at years, frankly, to getting back to where we would regard performance as being the old NHS constitutional standards. And I'd just like us as a board to face the reality of that and think what we're doing or can possibly do to help address that in a world of increasing demand. Really good briefing. Thank you for the questions, colleagues. Jeffrey, you do have the most elegant photograph in the board pack when it comes to executive directors. And over to you, Jeffrey, for your summary of all things about our people and workforce.
Oh, thanks, Russell. Well, I guess it's really good to see that all our hard work and efforts over the last few months are now leading to some really good improvements in our workforce key performance indicators. So when you look at the report, all the key indicators to do with sickness, absence, vacancies, staff turnover, they're all going in the right direction. Still a lot of work to be done, but I am confident that over the next few months, we'll still continue to see those positive improvements. We are also making some key changes to the way we do recruitment. So we're streamlining the recruitment process just to ensure that people can join the hospital as soon as possible. Our comprehensive In Touch staff engagement campaign kicked off in May, and this is centered around 4 key areas as captured within my paper. So we are engaging with staff across all sites, and this campaign will run until July. So we will be using insights and feedback from staff to try and inform and advise on Wye Valley comprehensive action plans in August, which will be coming back to the board in due course. But the engagement campaign is going down really well, and non-execs can also attend any of those sessions if they wanted to do so. And in line with our strategic ambition to be a more flexible employer, we are calling upon all our line managers to ensure that no one is rejected for a post because of the lack of flexible working. And likewise, the challenge is no one should be leaving Wye Valley because of the lack of flexible working. So we're really calling on our managers to do that, and we all signed up to that. So all in all, the performance indicators are going in the right direction. Our staff engagement program is going really well, and I am confident, as I said, that we'll continue to see those improvements over the coming months. Those are the key highlights from our report, Russell. Happy to take any questions.
No, thank you, Jeffrey. And that sort of very clear narrative that you talked about in terms of flexibility came through loud and clear with the meetings yesterday at the F&P. Questions and perspectives to Jeffrey, Nicola?
Hi, Jeffrey. Yeah, I thought it was a really good and interesting report today. So when you see all those metrics start to converge in terms of and seeing what went on in the background to make that happen. So picking out like the band 2 work that we've done on and you've done on career progression, it's really good to see that really starting to cut in now. And year on year, that is from last year to this year, that is a huge reduction. I mean, I don't think we can just walk past that statistic. An 11% reduction in turnover is massive. So huge well done for that. I say everything's heading in the right direction, and I acknowledge it's not where it needs to exactly be, but it goes back to that's how many boots are now on the floor, and we're there to help. I suppose the next challenge for us then is to start thinking about, does that aggressive reduction start to really add into what we're seeing with agency, which I know we're seeing good figures this month. And I thought we can start challenging ourselves now to say, is that enough from the improvements we're seeing? And then the only other observation I'd make is it comes up time again, and it links into something that was at Quality Committee last week, and that's pharmacy. That's been going on for a long time now, and that seems to be stuck and not going anywhere, and there doesn't seem to be light at the end of the tunnel. And I was reflecting on last week, we were talking about some of the research work and the research income that we might get if we had more pharmacists on the ground, and I suppose that would be a good one just to have some future update on, to see what that direction of travel is. I haven't spoken to Tony McConaughey lately. I know he was doing lots, but I haven't heard lately where we are with it, and it would be useful.
No, good point, well made. I mean, we are suffering with challenges on pharmacy recruitment across the foundation group, but Jeff, if you can take that away and come back to us, that would be good. Thank you. And Ian?
Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. Lots of positives in the report. Just a bit of feedback. I was in maternity on Tuesday afternoon, and the insight cards were much in evidence there, and some really positive feedback from staff. And interestingly, not just about the cards themselves and that particular initiative, but actually what that demonstrates in terms of our overall commitment to listening to staff. And I think we can't underestimate how what might seem in some ways like small gestures some of the time actually create a greater impact in terms of the way that that's received. So helpful just for you to have that feedback.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Jane, need to pick up the pace a little bit. Really good discussions. And Katie, year end, how did we look at the end of the year, and how do you think we're looking at the start of the year?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So as you've said, we're a little bit in between periods this month. So in terms of 22-23, and we'll come on to it with the draft annual report shortly, from a financial perspective, we achieved in line with our planned year-end deficit. So we planned a £6.6 million deficit, and we achieved £6.5 million subject to audit. So we landed where we needed to. In terms of the report that's in the IPR this month, so just pulling out a couple of key headlines, members will recall that we endorsed the draft financial plan at our April meeting, but at that point we were still exploring further mitigations to the deficit plan. Since that meeting, we were able to confirm some additional funding around diagnostics and also redistribution within the integrated care system. And so our final deficit plan is in the pack and reflects a deficit of £22.3 million for 23-24. And of course, it's just worth remembering that the underlying deficit, once you take out some of those one-off items in the year, is a worse or a greater level of deficit than that £22.3 million. And so our focus really does need to be on that medium-term financial improvement to start to tackle that underlying position. We've included in the pack the month one performance. It's early in the financial year, so it's really difficult to take any trends from this point, but pleasing to note that in the first month of the year, we were marginally better than we'd planned to be, and particularly pleasing, as we've mentioned a couple of times, to see the really significant step down in the run rate on our nursing agency spend in the month. We also saw a reduction in medical agency spend, albeit not to the same level, but certainly some green shoots there as well. And indeed, agency spend as a percentage of our pay bill was at about 8.1% this month, which is the lowest we've seen for a significant number of months. So definitely a step in the right direction, but a significant challenge still to deliver across the remainder of the year. We've touched on the need for financial improvement to deliver the overall plan. So at this point in the year, we haven't got fully identified plans for the full 15.7 million that we need to deliver to hit the overall plan. And we did see a small underperformance in the month as a result, albeit it was mitigated in overall net terms in the outturn this month. We've already touched on the real focus on both cost out improvement, but also productivity improvement to really drive both the waiting list and also our value for money. The only other thing I wanted to draw out of the report today was particularly around cash. So given the deficit plan for the year, cash will become a problem as we work through the year, and we will require access to cash support from the national team. There's an established process for doing so, albeit we haven't had to use it for some time. But under that process, we need to make a first submission by the middle of June, and any national requests for access to cash support require board endorsement to do so. So we are deliberately today through the paper asking board to endorse that submission to ask for national support with cash to maintain our obligations going forward. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions or perspectives to Katie? Andrew?
Yeah, if we take the CPIP programme, the gap that needs to be closed on the CPIP programme, and then the additional target that was allocated, there's still about 7 million to find. Is that right? That's quite a material figure, not only in cash terms, isn't it, in organisational terms, to deliver that sort of level.
Yeah, it is of that order, Andrew, and certainly that's where we've had significant focus. And those that were at FMPE yesterday, we've spent a significant amount of time during those meetings yesterday with each of the divisions, really trying to understand the actions that they've got in place locally and ensuring that that ownership is being driven down to the lowest level in the organisation and not sort of held centrally. So significant focus, and certainly a couple of areas that we're escalating more regular conversations with to really drive some of those further schemes and plans into the schedule that should give us more confidence over the next couple of months.
Ben, did you want to come in on that point?
No, I was going to come back on the cash.
Okay, do we just want, well, I was going to handle the cash, but go back to you on the cash, then I'll go to Nicola.
Okay, yeah, it was just to make the observation that it's obviously disappointing that, having had our loans cleared only a couple of years ago, that we're into having to borrow cash again. To reassure the board, we are seeking still that funding to recognise the rurality of Wye Valley, which is a special case, and in fact, as referred to in national guidance, Wye Valley is a special case. So that the level of which we hope to secure would have resolved that cash gap in our plan. And we're still working on that, but so I support it, but I think it's frustrating that we've not had an answer on that issue yet, because it would have led to a situation where we didn't need to borrow.
Yeah, I'll come back to the cash in a sec. Thanks, Glenn. And Nicola?
Yeah, 2 points. I think one of them actually was building on what Andrew said, and with the challenge we've got ahead. So when we look at this month, and yeah, I know it's the first month, but it is ahead of where we need to be. I think it was that question of, well, how far ahead do we need to be to give ourselves that room in the second half, and do we actually need to give ourselves almost a stretch target in H1 that we look at that gives us at least some security as we go into that H2 that we're going to make it, was just from a one point. I think on the CPIP front, and Andrew, I'm sorry you weren't at audit committee last week, but there was a really good paper on the CPIP and from the internal audit, and I think if we were picking up those actions, I think that'll put us in a better place of at least understanding and triangulating those CPIP conversations as well. And as well, so that was just a point. And my second point was just this 3 capital projects. I was trying to think back to when we had 3 such large capital projects underway since I've been sat in this chair, certainly. And I think that is a potential risk, and we know how they've all overrun in the past. So I just wanted to put it on the table to say we should have a red flag with that volume. Thank you.
Point well made on the capital side, but isn't it great that we got the capital to be able to transform services going forwards? But it's right to be a risk. Thank you. Katie, just one quick question for me. I think you said the agency, etc. bill this month was 8.1% of our total wage cost. What number does it? I want to log a number in for the board. So almost every month you can give. Well, on average this year, what does that need to be for us to achieve budget? Do you want to think about that and maybe just let us know?
Yeah, I will do, Chair.
Because I think it would be quite helpful every month saying we needed to be, I'll make up a number, 8%. This month it's 8.3. So at least we're getting a number locked in our mind. I know it's not as simple as being a 12-month average, yeah, but I think it's just useful to log a number into our brains, because I think that would be helpful. The other observation I'd make is, and I've never quite understood it in business, but it's been 95% of my experience, is if you start a year well, it then tends to gain its own momentum and you do well that year. If you start a year badly, you tend to have a bad year. So the first month, getting it out of the way and doing well is a good start. The key thing, and Jane recognised it in her introduction, the key thing that can blow us totally off course are the various different strike potential activities that we come before us, because it decimates activity and effort. But outwith of that, I think starting as we have done is a good place to start. And I was enormously encouraged by the adult nature and quality of innovation and drive and enthusiasm coming through yesterday's F&Bs, which, as advocated, you chaired excellently. Okay, team, we'll move on then. And the first item for approval then, sorry, just before we do, if you're not happy to implicitly approve Katie's request for cash at some point during this year, please raise a digital hand. So implicit board approval for that, Katie, thank you. So we'll then move on to the draft annual report and annual governance statement for approval. Over to you, Katie.
I think Erica was going to lead off, Chair, and then I'll join in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I think we've learned over the past couple of years that the audit schedule, the timings and the requirements have changed significantly. So whilst this is an end of year board, you will see that there are still gaps in the annual report, which we're working with the auditors to complete, and Katie will expand on that. So I think for next year, knowing that this is now the case, we'll be changing the format so we can have an audit committee and attempt to present the board with the final version. Ahead of that, I am seeking delegated authority for audit committee to approve the annual report and annual governance statement, subject to there being no significant material changes. And the only other point is to draw your attention to the annual governance statement, which is on 118 of 351 of the pack. We have had draft audit opinion that there are no or that we have adequate and effective framework for risk management, governance and internal control, so which is positive. If there are any changes to the any of the document, we are planning to submit the final, hopefully, version to Audit Committee on the 15th of June.
Thank you, Erica. Very clear. Katie, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just picking up the annual accounts as part of the annual report and all of that kind of closing off of the year. So the draft accounts for 22-23 are currently with our external auditor for review. And therefore, as Eric has already described, there are a couple of gaps within the annual report that's presented today, and particularly some of the numbers in the remuneration report, which is particularly complex these days with lots of ratios, including substantive bank and agency staff. So just some work being completed in the background there before the published version. And I've already mentioned that overall we achieved in line with the planned deficit for the year, and that's reflected in the annual report. And we did share the draft accounts with audit committee members last week for an informal review as part of the process to bring them to a conclusion. I think it's just worth referencing in terms of the external audit process that the scale of activities that our external auditor now has to undertake in order to be able to provide an opinion on the accounts and their value for money assessment has significantly increased over recent years, and that's partly why the national timetable has been extended, conscious of the level of activity that needs to take place. So with that in mind, the timetable does remain challenging, and the teams are working really closely together to ensure that we get that accounts process and the audit process over the line. the external auditor have very kindly brought some of their team on site as well, which is really helping to just facilitate that joint working this year, which is something different to what we did last year. And I guess just to conclude, really, I'd just like to note my thanks to the finance teams and broader teams across the organisation that input into both the accounts and the annual report. It's a huge amount of effort that goes into the production of these and the audit process, and just to put on record our thanks to all colleagues involved.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Erica. Any questions to Erica or Katie about the draft annual report and annual governance statement? If you're not happy to provide delegated authority to the audit committee for the sign-off and the input to finalisation of those reports, please raise a digital hand. Okay, thank you very much for your hard work, team. And I know the hard work is going to continue. You have the delegated authority. Thank you. We've then got the draft quality accounts. Lucy?
Thank you, Chair. So we're seeking approval for the quality account today. The quality account's been drafted in line with national guidance, and you'll be pleased to know that the quality account is no longer subject to an audit opinion similar to that Katie and Erica have described for the other year-end accounts. From my perspective, the quality account has been pulled together in line with the national requirements. It's been through the wider organisation and through members of Quality Committee for comments and feedback, and Quality Committee reviewed the final version of that last week and recommended it for submission to board today for approval. The quality account is subject to receipt of opinion from Health Watch and the ICS. But again, given the timescales of validating some of the information that needs to be in there, they need a little while longer than today to be able to provide their opinion. So we're seeking approval of the account today, subject to the addition of any opinion received from Health Watch and the ICS, with an agreement that by exception, I would inform board if there were any material objections to the content of the account from either the ICS or Health Watch when we receive their opinions in the next 2 weeks. We are required to publish the quality account on our website by the 30th of June. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lucy. And just before we go to questions, Ian, anything you'd like to add as Chair of Quality and Audit Committee, Quality Assurance Committee?
No, I mean, I support the quality account. I think it's a comprehensive account. It's transparent. We're very open about the challenges that we've had. Equally, there are lots of positives in there as well. Perhaps the one thing I would pull out from the report is the bit in there about the national reporting learning system, about our reporting of incidents. We're actually with the second highest trust for reporting of incidents, which says a lot about a culture of openness and transparency and commitment to learning. I would say the vast majority of those are low harm incidents, but actually the fact we're reporting them says a lot about the openness and transparency of our operating culture. So no, I commend the quality account to board. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Well said. Any questions or perspectives to Lucy or Ian? Lucy, I'm happy to provide delegated authority, but just in terms of symmetry, I can ask delegated to you as Director of Nursing and Ian as Chair of Quality Assurance to delegate to the two of you. It just provides symmetry with what we do on the Audit Committee side as well with Katie. So if you're not happy to provide that delegated authority for the final sign-off of the quality accounts, please raise the digital hand. Duly delegated. Thank you, Lucy. And can you thank the team who put in a phenomenal amount of work on the production of the quality accounts as well. We're then on to the Quality Committee Terms of Reference and Work Plan, and we're with you again, Lucy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So they're presented today for approval. We did do a review of the Quality Committee's functions towards the end of last year, and therefore the terms of reference had been updated. There were no major or material changes to the function of the Quality Committee, but we have emphasised within the terms of reference that stronger emphasis on subcommittee reporting through to the Quality Committee, and also that quarterly reporting cycle around our quality priorities for 23-24. The work plan's been included for information, I'm seeking approval today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Super, thank you, Lucy. Any questions or perspectives on those terms of reference and work plan? If you're not happy to approve, please raise a digital hand. Okay, thank you. Then we're on to the board assurance framework. Over to you, please, Erica.
Thank you. This new BAF reflects the risks against us achieving the 23-24 objectives. It has been created in consultation with each of the lead executive directors. The high risks for the trust haven't been included. I intend for them to come to board in July. As part of our transition from Datex to InPhase, it's given us an opportunity to have a bit of an overhaul and a refresh of the risks, and alongside an audit that went to audit committee last week. So I envisage those risks coming to you in July, but the BAF is there for comment and approval, please.
Thank you very much. Questions on the board assurance framework from colleagues? Okay, and Katie?
Sorry, Chair, it looked like my hand went up a bit slowly there. It was just to draw out, it is in the cover report, the high risk that we've now added in relation to delivery of the financial plan and the underlying position. There was some debate around whether it ought to be a high level risk or a BAF risk. In line with how we've treated it previously, we've approached it as a high rated risk at this time, but we have included that one alongside the BAF for context for the audience today.
Thank you, Katie, very clear. If you're not happy to approve the BAF, please raise a digital hand. Duly approved, thank you, Erica. And then we've got our Modern Slavery Act statement, Erica.
Thank you. This is a statement that allows us to comply with the Modern Slavery Act 2015. I can provide the board with assurance that we are actually doing everything that we say we are doing in that statement, and it is our intention to host it on our website.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the Modern Slavery Act statement? If you're not happy to approve, please raise a digital hand. Okay, and then we finally, on the approval part of today's board, move to the Foundation Group Strategy Subcommittee terms of reference. I'll take these as read. Any questions from colleagues? Again, if you're not happy to approve, please raise a digital hand. Duly approved. Well done, team. Thank you. So we're then on to just a couple of other points. The first is the digital programme update. Katie, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take the paper as read. It's the standard paper that comes every 2 meetings and describes the range of activities and projects within the digital programme arena. And it's primarily the projects are focused on either our digital maturity being improved or aligning to some of the national frameworks, which is where the funding streams come from. In terms of 23-24, our key areas of focus internally are around optimising our electronic patient record system, including digital noting or digital nursing, and progressing the case for single sign-on functionality, and also around our ED system and the business case for that. Alongside our internal priorities, we engage and support system and regional wide programmes. We've already referenced digital pathology as we've gone through today's meeting, and another good example would be the shared care record, which our clinicians are increasingly making use of as part of their day-to-day clinical activities. Key risks from a programme perspective remain availability of funding, so we're still awaiting final confirmation of national funding for 23-24 in respect of digital, and therefore managing the programme with some caution at this point until that's confirmed, and also in terms of capacity within the digital workforce to deliver the range of programmes at the pace that we would wish to do. Since the last report, the only other thing to note is that we've engaged in and submitted the current status from a Wye Valley perspective against the National Digital Maturity Assessment process, and that supports our ongoing review of prioritisation of programmes and activities. I'm happy to take any questions.
Very clear update. Thank you, Katie. Thank you for your leadership in it. Any questions or perspectives, Jane?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the back in terms of that risk because the amount that we've got to do, and that that prioritisation piece, particularly with our Maxims partners around which things we're going to concentrate on is going to be important. And we aren't going to be able to do everything that we want to do. I guess I just wanted to note here, though, that our digital nurse noting solution, in a sense, it's a tick in the box because it's in, but we know it isn't good enough yet, and so that is going to have to be one of our higher priorities, and we'll need to come back with what things might fall out on the basis of that, because our nurses have been using it for a while now, and it is taking up too much of their time. So it's a high priority for us to get that resolved.
Important and good point. Thank you, Jane. And Ian?
Yeah, quick question. This report rightly focuses on the kind of big change programs to become more digital. Comment I often get talking to staff, and it came up a bit at Financial Performance yesterday, one of the meetings, is about how we make more routine improvements to our system and avoid, as it were, so we get the new system, and then how do we kind of fix the bugs and improvements as we go along? And is there an issue there, and how good are we at managing and prioritising those bits of work?
Yeah, good challenge, Ian. Katie?
Yeah, so I'm happy to look at how we build some more of that into these reports and going forwards. I mean, there is an existing process around that. I think what we've done, if you think over the last 12 months, is embedded our clinical systems group, which is that sort of business as usual function to really take forward now that we've spent all of this investment money in digital and really getting ourselves in a good position to make sure that we don't go backwards and that we are able to make those incremental improvements and benefits from a day-to-day perspective, as well as the big transformational change. So we'll look at how we pull in some more of that reporting from there as we go forward.
Okay, I wasn't particularly looking for new reports, Katie. It was more, it's an inevitable consequence as you become more digital. You need that side of the equation as well. So it's just, asking the question, but I'm not really wanting to kind of place a burden in terms of further reporting.
Thanks, Ian.
And if colleagues are happy, then we'll move to the policy panel update. Erica?
I'll take the report as read, please, Chair. It's a routine update. The only thing to draw out of it is the number of policies about to expire is increasing, but hopefully the team will be on it and we'll continue to review through the policy panel.
Thank you. Any questions on the policy panel update? Okay, thank you. So we'll just run through some committee reports. The audit committee, the 16th of March. Nicola, is there anything you particularly like to pull out?
No, nothing to add that's not on there, Russell.
Thank you. Any questions to Nicola or the audit committee on that report? Thank you, Andrew, for all the support you've given behind the scenes to Nicola to transfer over the crown of chairmanship from your first self to Nicola. And then we'll move on to the Integrated Care Executive reports from the 14th of February and the 3rd of April. Francis, anything you'd like to add?
No, take it as read. I suppose the only thing to note is the development of the memorandum of understanding that will then enhance the terms of reference for ICE going forward, and those will come to board for approval at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Francis. Any questions to Francis? Thank you, Francis, for your hard work and colleagues' hard work. And then we'll move on to the Quality Committee of the 30th of March and the 27th of April. Ian and Nicola.
So just a couple of things to pick out from the March report, Chair. The first one is that half of the meeting was a workshop with the regional NHS lead for infection prevention and control, which provided a really useful support and challenge session and sits behind, alongside all the other things we're doing, some of the developments and improvements that we've seen in that area. And the second one is just to pull out the focus that we've got on maternity services, and the particular reference in there to multidisciplinary team working, where there's been an issue about whether we're actually accurately recording some of the multidisciplinary working around ward rounds and handovers, and we were pleased in March to see an improvement. We're not there yet, but actually it's helpful just to point out that we are focused on that in Quality Committee. And then I wasn't able to chair the April meeting, so Nicola stood in. So I don't know whether Nicola's got anything to add.
Nothing to add, just big shoes to fill.
You charmer, Nicola, you charmer. So you thrived for 37 years in the corporate world of HSBC. Any questions to Ian or Nicola? Okay, thank you. So move on then to the Audit Committee, the 8th of December. Nicola, back with you.
Yeah, no, I just the obviously with the PFI meeting, there's lots going on in the background and more meetings again in the next 2 weeks. I think it's a really interesting time because we're just starting to get to the data and starting to follow the actions now. But I think our key priority is now getting the support for Christian to help with that workload. It's came out loud and clear that he can't do this off the side of his desk. I'm really excited by the new Ned that is joining us, because I think that will give us really good support on that committee and looking at this piece of work. But I say we've got interviews on Monday, so we're hoping to move that forward with the recruitment next week. So that will be good.
Thank you, Nicola. Questions and perspectives to Nicola? Glenn?
There's also the opportunity to get a bit more consultancy advice in at group level on PFI, which David Moon is having a look at right now. So that can hopefully help us.
Yeah, David's been really good, so really good to work with. Thank you.
Great, thanks Nicola, thanks Glenn. So we duly note those, and I think we're on to then the Foundation Group Board and Action Log from the 3rd of May. For members of the public who may not be familiar, every 3 months Wye Valley is part of the Foundation Group, which consists of Wye Valley, South Warwickshire University Foundation Trust and George Eliot, meet for a board where all of the executive directors and non-executive directors come together digitally, and we compare and contrast performance and pull out learnings. Any questions on those minutes from the 3rd of May? Please raise a digital hand. If you're not happy to approve them, please raise a digital hand. Okay, duly approved, thank you. And then the action points are on page 311 of our pack. And there's just one about group analytics going forward, so we'll come back to that in the future. So I think we're then on to the Quality Committee of the 23rd of February and the 30th of March, which are just for information. Anything you wanted to add here, Ian?
Sorry, Russell, no, nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Any questions to Ian on those old Quality Committee minutes? So any other business, colleagues? Please raise a digital hand if there are any other business. Okay, thank you. So no other business. We haven't had any given questions from members of the public, but Garth Nappit, I think you've joined us. I hope you've enjoyed today. Anything you'd like to ask us before we close the meeting? Garth, if you're talking to me, I can't see you coming off mute. So I'll take your silence as no questions. So we'll therefore conclude the meeting, and the next meeting is on the 6th of July at 1 p.m. Look forward to seeing members of the public hopefully then. In the meantime, colleagues, it's now just after 2:20. I suggest we meet again at 2:30 for the confidential